Connor, we'll move on and talk about Yemen, where there is, I guess a few important stories, but maybe the most important, and certainly the one that's actually generating some headlines in the U.S. mainstream media, is the UAE's oil facility being hit by the Houthis. But we want to start off and just mention that before that, Saudi Arabia announced that they were going to intensify their airstrikes of Yemen. And again, this announcement came before the Houthi strike on the UAE oil facility. Now, my guess is that this strike may have targeted the UAE because of an issue I talked about the last time we covered Yemen on the show, Connor, and that was the UAE had backed the Yemeni Giants Brigade, and this is a group of Salafists in Yemen, about 15,000 people, a part of this militia, and it was able to turn back Houthi gains in the Shabwa and Mered province, gains that the Houthis had worked on for a long time. This is a militia in Saudi Arabia or in Yemen that's, while backed by the UAE, loyal to the Saudi-backed government of Hadi. And so, for whatever reason, after this, the Houthis carry out this drone strike. Now, it could have nothing to do, I guess, with the Giants Brigade taking that territory, but I don't know. I'm kind of suspicious. I think that might have something to do with it. And so they launched an attack. Ultimately, at least three drones hit their mark, hitting a key oil facility and setting three oil tanks on fire, or petrol tanks on fire. They say that 3 people were killed in the attack, 2 Indian and 1 Pakistani man. So none of these people were actually of the UAE. Good reminder that, in these Gulf countries, they have lots of imported and migrant labor that this isn't, I think in Qatar they have far more migrant labor workers than they actually have citizens of the country. And so very unfortunate that this is who ends up paying the price for the prince's wars. But, it's not really unexpected that the people of Yemen will eventually seek to retaliate against the Saudis and the Emiratis, who have been raining bombs down on their country for the past 7 years now. There were also reports that this caused some kind of damage and fires at a UAE airport. I believe the airport in Abu Dhabi, actually. However, not exactly clear to me how extensive that damage is, if this is going to make any impact in the world oil market, like, say, the 2019 attack on the Aramco facilities in Saudi Arabia did. But, it's significant. If you look at a map of Yemen, and almost all the population, everybody lives in the west of the country. The Houthis control Sana'a and the areas around Sana'a. So this is a relatively far way away from Houthi-controlled territory, Connor, that they're able to carry out this attack with some kind of accuracy. Of course, the U.S. mainstream media and the Saudis and the Emiratis and, the entire world empire is blaming the Iranian-backed Houthis for this attack like it, was definitely a result of Iran. I'm not so sure that that's the case. Now, maybe Iran was somehow involved in giving the Houthis some of this technology or something like that. I'm not saying that that's the case. Maybe it is, but it doesn't exactly mean that this attack came in the direction of the Iranians. In response, the Saudis bombed the capital of Yemen. 6 people were killed in a strike on a camp for the 1st Armored Division, that's the Houthis military. And then another 14 people were killed on an attack in a civilian neighborhood against a Houthi general. He was killed, his wife was killed, his 25-year-old son was killed, and at least 6 other people that lived in that house. And so, Connor, my great suspicion is that not all these people killed were at all involved in the fight, and a lot of them were just civilians. Also, this, was in a neighborhood, and so some of the people who were dead were, just happened to be people who lived next to this guy. The UAE is calling for the United States to label the Houthis as a terrorist group in response to this attack. I don't think the Biden administration will go along with this. Connor, if you remember back to the beginning of the Trump administration, or of the Biden administration, the very end of the Trump administration. They named the Houthis a terrorist organization, then the Biden administration removed that label. So it seems unlikely that they would slap it back on. However, not impossible for that to happen. The Israelis are also signaling their support to the UAE after this, saying that they will offer military and intelligence support to the UAE. Not exactly clear what kind of support they're offering. Intelligence support, satellite pictures, things like that. Military report. Are they talking about maybe providing the UAE with an Iron Dome light system or something like that to try to combat these attacks? One thing we can't leave out when we're talking about this, Connor, is that in the coming weeks, Saudi Arabia is going to be asking for more interceptor, Patriot missile systems from the United States. If the Senate or House rejects this and does not allow the sale to go through, it could be something that forces the Saudis to the negotiating table. I really think this is huge, but if there's, a lot of these kinds of attacks going on, it's going to be used, at least by the Houthis, as propaganda, see how bad they need these systems, and they're going to use that to push the sale through. So I fully expect that that's going to happen, but just wanted to point out that, it's kind of funny that every time they need interceptors, it seems like a couple of these missile attacks end up getting through somehow. I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to make out to be too much of a conspiracy, but it sometimes seems suspicious to me.
I picked up before we started the show on the antiwar.com newswire. Jason Ditz just wrote something about the strikes in Sana'a. The most recent ones are the worst since 2019. I think it was something like, at least right now they're saying around 20 people have been killed. Yeah. And again, like you're saying, it sounds like it's mostly civilians.
Yeah, and I guess them saying it's the worst since 2019, I just get a little suspicious that they probably killed more people in airstrikes since then, but at least what's reported in the Western media, that does seem to be the case. Right. Last story on Yemen I want to mention here, Connor, and that is the UN is calling for the release of a UAE ship that the Houthis seized at the beginning of January. Remember, at the beginning of January, there was a few attacks on U.S. Bases in Iraq that house U.S. soldiers in response to the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the 2-year anniversary. On that same day, the Houthis seized a UAE boat. The Houthis claimed that this boat was loaded up with weapons. The Emiratis say it was just medicine. My guess is that there may be both, true. There's probably a gun and a first aid kit on that ship. Now, there's probably a lot more of one than the other. I have absolutely no clue, which way was biased, but I wouldn't be surprised, if there was even a significant amount of both, some medical supplies and weapons that, that if you have an army on the ground, you do need medicine for them. So just because you're bringing medicine somewhere doesn't necessarily mean it's for the starving and sick children and all that. The seizure of the ship was interesting because I think I saw a report. It happened off the coast of Sqahorda, which is an island in the Gulf of Aden and not necessarily near where the Houthi held territory is. So that would maybe suggest that they have some pretty sizable naval capabilities. I mean, not enough to break the Saudi blockade, but if you're seizing UAE ships, that's something. And also maybe coordination with people who are living on the island of Sqahorda, even if that is, I think, pretty much UAE territory at this point. I don't really think the Houthi government, the Saudi-backed government, which is the internationally recognized government of Yemen, I don't think they really control it. I think the UAE pretty much controls it at this point. So, anything else on Yemen, Connor?
Well, I was just gonna say with Sqahorda, aren't they built? The UAE's building. They have a lot of construction out there.
Yeah, military bases and places for the princelings to go. This is, I don't know how widely it's called this, but at least if you search Galapagos of the Indian Ocean, this island comes up. There are a few specific unique species. There's these really cool looking dragon blood trees that grow uniquely on that island. And so, there is probably a lot of that island's natural biodiversity is going to be destroyed by this, and people looking more for like a nice vacation spot and a place to land planes and these massive military planes, and not really caring about the people that live there and then the natural beauty of the island.